Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tousi TV, your global news channel. I'm Maya Tousi, and the British establishment have decided to protect the holy war in favor of Islam. Of course, Jihad is described as the act to defend and promote Islam at any means necessary, essentially. And there's a judgment from the UK courts earlier today that has completely destroyed sanity and common sense and the basic rule of law based on the British Constitution. So we're going to give you guys the details on this and what exactly happened. We have some statement, we have a reaction from Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, and also the Free Speech Union, who are furious about what's actually happening in Britain. Now, the British state essentially siding with Jihad in order not to offend the pro-Islam gang. Saying that essentially fighting for Jihad, which is basically, as I said, to protect and promote Islam by any means necessary, could be allowed under certain circumstances on the streets of Britannia. So, this is Musa Kadri. Musa Kadri on the right was the Muslim who decided to bring out a knife on the streets of the United Kingdom and in London, and repeatedly targeted and assaulted another man called Hamid Kuskan because the other man, Hamid, was anti-Islam and he was burning the Quran. Of course, that offended Musa. This happened outside the Turkish consulate. The new judgment, and of course the British justice system and the judiciary, is based on precedent. So anytime there is a new judgment and there's a precedent created based on a specific case, that follows and carries forward for any judgment in the future. So we have a new precedent in terms of what the judges are now saying. This man who brought out a knife, attacked the man who was anti-Islam because he was offended, he's now been let go. As a reminder, this is what happened.
The man's come out with a knife now. Boss, look here, look.
So that's the guy with his, targeting
Go.
Hamid, the one on the floor, on the ground.
You fucking idiot! Burn the Quran!
Go. He's got a knife as well.
So and he's
you got
kicking
a knife,
him.
Man. Come with the
Fucking idiot!
Wait, don't come to me.
What for me?
Listen, I'm just filming,
Burn
yeah?
the Quran!
No, you shouldn't be. Listen.
My religion! You don't burn
So that act is obviously, since the 7th century, has been recognized as the act of jihad.
Come on, man. What
You
you doing?
have to protect the book
You're standing out in public road with
and the
your knife.
sensitivities around the ideology,
Exactly
any
what
means
you're doing.
necessary, with your body.
Stand up, fight, you fucking bully!
So you would think, regardless of what you might think about the way the
He just
West
did.
is going and the liberal society, regardless of what you think of the German government, the French government, the British government, the Canadian government, forget about all that stuff. Forget about the liberal movement. Forget about the leftists. Forget about those who are not patriotic. Based on common sense and the rule of law in these countries, you would think that it doesn't matter what your intentions are. If you go out there on the street carrying something like that and obviously using your, kicking someone, doesn't matter. We used to have the rule of law. Like, it's just basic sanity. You know, that's something you don't do. And it obviously also goes back to the Old Testament. Just don't harm somebody else. It's not a nice thing. Harming another individual. Physically harming another individual. But things have now changed. A new precedent based on the UK courts. Despite the fact that Musa, he pleaded guilty to assault and being in possession of a bladed article, Musa Kadri has now been handed a suspended sentence of just 20 weeks. So no jail time. And the judge said that he lost his temper and his act of jihad was, under this circumstance essentially, is allowed. It's permitted. He shouldn't get punished. He shouldn't be sent to jail because it's essentially justified. That is the reality. The judge said, and I quote, In the sentencing, the judge said, I note, however, that you are now 59 years old and someone of an exemplary character. You are a loved husband and father, a hard worker, and someone who those who have written on your behalf cannot praise highly enough. You are relied upon as a carer and much respected in your work and charity. Based on that, the judge said, in that moment, your jihad, act of jihad, was justified. Because you were just angry, you were offended. It's okay, you don't need jail time. This is the new precedent based on the British justice system. So all this is sending as a message, and I'm going to show you the reaction from the other side, is if you are a jihadi, as long as you have people around you to write testimonies for you if you happen to go to court, as long as you are perceived as hard worker and a father and a husband, and you have enough allies to write you a letter to give to the judge, then you can do jihad, and you could just say, this is the precedent, we already had this case now. You always refer back to it. I was offended and my jihad is justified, and based on this, you are now allowed to do it. On the other hand, the man who was attacked on the street outside the Turkish consulate. Why? Because he was offending Musa Kadri, because he was offending his book, the political ideology of Islam. What do you think happened to him? He was punished. The one with the knife, the jihadi one, not punished. The one who simply offended people, he has now been punished. This is Hamid. Hamid, who offended the Quran, was originally charged by the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, with intent to cause alarm or distress against the religious institution of Islam. The charges then changed to a public order offence, disorderly behaviour within the hearing or sight of a person likely to be caused alarm or distressed. Meaning his crime was that he was offending a book with pages on it, which is a piece of paper, somewhere that somebody could see it and feel alarmed and distressed. So the one who had a knife, the jihadi, because he was alarmed and distressed, his act is justified, because the real villain was the man who was offending by burning a book that was his possession. He paid for that book, the Islamic ideology of Quran, and he decided to just burn it. It's his book, it's his possession, private property. But he is the villain, and this is now the new legal precedent that's now been created in the United Kingdom. Now Hamid was convicted. He's been punished and also ordered to pay a fine of £240. He is now living in hiding due to credible death threats to his life. Musa Kadri, the other man, is walking free, and he's being protected by the authorities. The one who assaulted him, the jihadi, is protected. Hamid, who, did something to the book that he owned because he paid for it, he now lives in hiding. He's not being offered protection. He has to use his own private money to keep himself safe and his family, and nobody knows where he is living. He's in his own witness protection program. Now, Toby Young and the Free Speech Union have responded to this, saying this sentencing will do nothing to dispel the suspicion that Britain has a two-tier criminal justice system. Had a knife-wielding white male pleaded guilty to attacking a Muslim for breaching a Christian blasphemy code, you can bet your bottom dollar he would have gone to prison. Absolutely. If a white Christian Brit does that, or anybody really, but by targeting, for example, a jihadi for offending Christianity, probably at this point a life sentence. But if you do it based on jihad, you can justify it because of the protections created by the hate speech laws. If you say you were alarmed and distressed, you can do the act of jihad in certain circumstances. So the jihad is now allowed based on a legal precedent under certain circumstances. If you can justify your act of jihad, you are allowed to do it in the United Kingdom. Robert Jenrick, who here is wearing a Hamas terrorist jumper, and he got into trouble for that because you're not allowed to offend Hamas, even though it's a banned organization. He's now written a letter. And obviously the whole thing kicked off based on everything that's happened recently with the way Robert Jenrick, for example, has been leading a campaign against Islamism and against cancel culture and everything, generally speaking. But he's written a letter to the Director of Public Prosecutions saying, I am writing to ask plainly, why was Avi Musa Kadri charged as it was? On the footage and the admitted words, the sequence is clear. Mr. Kadri confronts Mr. Kuskan outside the Turkish consulate saying, I'm going to kill you. Leaves, returns armed with a knife, makes repeated slashing motions, pursues him, and once the victim is on the ground, spits at him and obviously kicks him. He then tells the police he was protecting his religion. That's jihad, obviously. Yet the case proceeded on common assault and simple possession of a bladed article, producing a suspended term. So as the 139A Criminal Justice Act of 1988, so threatening with a bladed article, and Section 16 offences against the Person Act 1861, threat to kill, considered and rejected. And if so, on what evidential basis? Why was no religiously aggravated count added given the stated motive? Was ABH considered in light of the pursuit, the kicks and spits, and any injury evidence? Who took the charging decision? What material was before them, including the video? And how was the code for the Crown prosecutors applied to a knife-enabled reprisal aimed at silencing lawful expression in a public place? He finished by saying, this was a landmark case where significant violence was deployed to oppress the victim's right to freedom of expression, primarily because of the attacker's religious views. The effect of the charge selection was to constrain both sentence and review. That is a matter of public confidence as much as law. I ask you to set out the CPS's written reasons in full. When a man arms himself and deploys violence to shut someone up, the law must bite. If the CPS will not use the tools Parliament has given it, I will promptly put this before the House. Now, we haven't received the response to Robert Jenrick's letter yet. I would be very interested to see what sort of excuse they're going to be using. But this was a landmark case. This is creating a legal precedent. And if you're watching this and you're jihadi, you can now justify your act of jihad based on technicalities. In certain circumstances, you're allowed to do it. If you are alarmed or distressed, you can do whatever you want. I mean, there are some lines, but if you basically threaten to someone directly, I'm going to kill you, and go and get a weapon, you're still allowed to do that. You'll be fine. Obviously, offending someone's book, well, specifically one book, Quran, then obviously you will get proper punishment. That hasn't really changed. So blasphemy laws exist now. We know that. But we also have the jihad protection laws, which are now being promoted by the British justice system and the British government, who are backing the courts and the judiciary. So it's a very dangerous situation that the British population are now facing. It's no longer just about government policies. This is the British state. This is the non-political side, or the unelected side of the system. You can't do anything about it. If you're watching from Britain, you have no power to change that. You don't have any power to hire or fire any of the people in charge, because we don't actually have checks and balances in that sense. Every institution, like the judiciary, for example, they are perceived as independent, but they're not independent because they are directly part of the state. And the whole thing is being controlled by Whitehall. Nothing will change. It doesn't matter what government minister you have. It doesn't matter what prime minister you have. It doesn't matter what MPs you have in the House of Commons. The system itself is not supposed to be changed unless the people who are not elected and they are working inside it, they can do whatever they want. You have no say. They want you to be, well, have the illusion that you have control over your destiny in Britain by saying every now and then you have an election. You can vote for a different party, for a new prime minister and new ministers, but actually you don't have any power. It doesn't matter who your prime minister is. It doesn't matter who your government ministers are. It doesn't matter. But people are still falling for the trap every few years. There's an election. Let's pick a new color for a new party. Oh, that one. I like that guy. That guy says things that I believe in. I like that one. Oh, I like the other party. They hold fun party conferences. It doesn't matter who your prime minister is. The British system, unless it's changed from within, it won't change. And government ministers don't have the power to change that. Let's get some reaction from you guys in the live chat. Charmaine, thank you very much, says they are literally converting Islamophobia. This is insane. There's so many issues with this because you've got the blasphemy law, Islamic blasphemy laws that have now been introduced, but also the jihadi protection laws, which is now the new legal precedent. Victor Red, Ivan says, was the judge called Mohammed? You'll be surprised that actually a lot of the judges in the deep state, as we call it, it's not the deep state like some sort of Illuminati, but the deep state in Britain is just called the British state because you have no say over what they are, what they do, who they are. A lot of them, they don't actually even have to be Muhammad or Abdul to do this. The betrayal is coming from within, the enemy within. And these are supposed to be the natives. Some of them are Anglo-Saxon Brits. But they are very much against the values of this country. And when we say values, we're not necessarily even talking about cultural values or the British attitude. I'm simply talking about the legal values, the rule of law, the existing framework of the British Constitution. They are against that, but they are working inside the system. And again, you have no say. You can't hire or fire them. It doesn't work like the United States, where, for example, when you have a new president, you could wipe out everybody from the White House and replace them, or change the director of the FBI or CIA. You can't do that in the United Kingdom. They have an actual representative democracy. We don't have that. We have the illusion of a parliamentary democracy with no real power to do anything, MPs. Sue says, so based on these precedents, someone can hurt or stab someone who burns a Bible or Torah, or obviously the cross or... No. So it only works because we have Islamic blasphemy laws in Britain. So only Islam is being protected. So if you do the same, if you, for example, target the Bible, it's not the same. You won't really be punished in that sense. And we've had so many examples. Only the blasphemy laws that we now have, based on the recent legal precedent, only applies to Islam. And the protection laws also applies only to Islam. So if, for example, a Christian crusader decides to get violent and goes around, I don't know, for example, attack mosques, right? And it says, I'm doing it because as a Christian crusader, I'm offended that these guys are trying to undermine my Christian values. If somebody does that, they are not going to be protected. It's not the same as those who do jihad to protect Islam. They will be protected because of the legal judgment. It's a dangerous territory, obviously, but this is just the beginning of the big change you're seeing in British society, unfortunately. Private Joe says, what a joke this country is. Say goodbye to Great Britain. Cops corrupt, government corrupt, lords corrupt, courts corrupt, and the primary main one, civil service corrupt. Rubates from Australia says, Your Honour, as a father and husband, I was alarmed and offended and distressed that a trans man approached my child. So I... insert action here. Say, no, that wouldn't work again. It's the same as the other example when someone said, what if you do that with, for example, the Bible or a cross? It only applies to the Islamic blasphemy laws that we have. So you can't justify it, for example, by committing violence against, I don't know, someone who happens to be trans or whatever. Jeff says, you speak the truth. It's a terrible situation. It's not just, for example, people who use it for political reasons. Say, oh, this is a perfect example of two-tier system or corruption. It goes beyond that. And there are people who could have technical discussions and debates about this. We could have two lawyers sit here, have a debate, one pro, one against. We could have political parties saying, well, this is terrible, Prime Minister. It's not that. It goes beyond all this. This is a dangerous territory for everybody concerned. And that actually includes everybody in the country, regardless of your religious views. That also includes some who have moved even from the Middle East or North Africa or from the Islamic world to the UK. They are also not safe. Nobody is safe because these sort of authoritarian, tyrannic nonsense, violence protected by law, could be affecting everybody, and it could backfire on those who are currently turning a blind eye or are basically happy with it. There are a lot of people who are not necessarily themselves acting on jihad, but they are sitting at home in places like Birmingham, in Luton, in Glasgow, in East London, who are sitting there. They're not necessarily promoting terrorism themselves. They don't have the balls to do it themselves, but they are basically fine with what just happened here. It's going to come back and bite them in the backside as well. It's going to backfire on every single person, including the jihadis. Let's not forget what the jihadis do. They did it in Syria, they did it in Iraq, they did it in Afghanistan. What do you think they do? When they launch against anybody they see on the street, including the others who are also pro-Islam. There is no discrimination. They believe in equality of hate and murder against anybody they see. So they even if that means, like you've seen what Hamas do in Gaza against their own allies and their own supporters, the Gazans, they don't care. There is equality in Islam. You will be equally opposed, even if you support the ideology. One day it will backfire on every single one of these people who are turning a blind eye. Right now they're happy. They're not necessarily promoting it, but they're like, just wait. England needs Trump. Nomad says the jihad is a hateful call of violence against the kuffars by the book. How can people in the UK be so ignorant to not see the whole Asia couldn't consume this ideology over 1,000 years ago? There's been a bit of a gap period between the rise of Islam a few centuries ago and where it was happening, especially after it got kicked out of Spain and Portugal, and that gap until now that it's been visible in Europe. Places like Saudi Arabia, places like UAE have been pushing out the extremists, pushing out the pro-jihadis. It's in their interest, makes sense, fair enough. Doesn't mean we in the West, our governments, are supposed to be welcoming them. But we have been welcoming them, and it's just the beginning. It's only been going on for about 30 years in terms of the big rise. The last 20, 30 years. And the last 5, 10 years, you can see more of it. Because, for example, 20 years ago, people thought, all we have to worry about is just a couple of terrorists, a couple of bombings. No. The fear is no longer just about terrorist acts. It's the insurgency inside your countries. It's on the ground. And it's happening softly. It doesn't even have to be this man, Musa, going around with a knife. It's the movement. They have forced, for example, existing multinational chains like KFC, the fried chicken place, enforcing it, making it mandatory for KFC in the UK to sell halal meat, for example. We've never had Jews going around making it mandatory for places to do kosher. In fact, they keep it to themselves. They say, no, we don't want to affect the rest of society. You do what you want to do. We're going to do our own kosher restaurant here. Whereas the imposition by the Islamic side, forcing, for example, a big international chain like KFC, that's just one example, you should just do halal. One by one, each branch across the country, halal, halal, halal. That's just one example. So it doesn't have to be bombs. It doesn't have to be terrorist attacks. Change is already coming. The face of the country is changing. And it's not really just about your skin color or that sort of stuff. Demographic change is a whole different issue. Talking about the fact that Pubs are closing down because they are forced to close down in most parts of Luton, Glasgow, East London, Birmingham, and many other places. Leicester, parts of Leeds. That's, again, a big symbolic attack. I know a lot of people who might not be drinkers, they're like, it's just a pub. Yeah, it's a shame, but I don't care about the pub. Pub, culturally, symbolically, is very important to British society. And it's nothing to do with alcohol. It's the overall home community. You bring down pubs, you're bringing down the soul of the British society. Just like the farming families up and down the country who are being brought down by the globalist governments. You bring down farmers, you bring down pubs, you end the non-halal meat. That's it. You don't need terrorists on the streets. There's more reaction here as well. So basically, if you're a terrorist, you're treated like a king, so might as well be a terrorist. But you have to justify it. You can do it under the jihadi protection laws, but you can't just be a terrorist for different causes. So you will still be punished if you're doing it in the name of something else. So it says, if you upset the violent criminals, you're nicked. Yeah. Deepak says, the UK future Islamic State of the United Kingdom. Yeah, we keep joking about it, but it's actually becoming more of a reality, slowly but surely. It's not a good thing. Julia says, no such thing as Islamic blasphemy. Well, there we have created the laws in the UK, so we do have them. So if you will be in trouble if you say things against it in the UK. It's not just about being cancelled. No. Legally, you will be prosecuted. I think it's time to invite the IDF. Release Stormer the sausage. Randall from Israel says, in Israel, most of us own weapons. If he tried this here, he would be taken down based on terrorist and self-defense laws. It's the same in the US. So in the United States, in Israel, these sort of places, the other person or somebody, some other civilian walking would have seen it. They will be armed for self-defense and they would have taken down their threat. There's an existing threat. He says, I'm going to kill you. He has a knife. I don't think there is any confusion here. I don't care about what triggered you. I don't care if you're doing it in the name of Islamic Jihad or if you're doing it because you're a vegan. You're a threat. You should be taken down. Just like what we had with the two Islamic brothers in Manchester airport about over a year ago, where they started beating up armed police officers in the UK. And because it's the United Kingdom, even the armed police at an airport, they are nice and polite. At that point, if you were in Israel, if you were in the US, and you're basically attacking the armed police officers who have guns, do you know what's going to happen to you in the middle of the airport? Especially if you're two Islamic brothers. You'll be a little bit shot. But the police at Manchester airport, they didn't do that. And they are told either shoot or there's a second option. You can't use your hand or anything because you're holding a gun. You're not allowed to. You have to use your feet. So they brought them down and they used their feet. And those guys got into trouble. The police officer got suspended. It's a lose-lose situation. So forget about civilians who could be armed. The police don't even have those powers, even if they are armed. But they have them, but they're so scared of using them. First Evil 100 says, help, I think it's time to start my villain arc. I do see the same thing that went down in Nepal. Who knows how many are on the edge right now. Yeah, we could talk about the imminent crisis all day. If we could go to the members of Tousi TV Plus, of course, if you're enjoying the content, if you think it's informative for you, make sure to get complete access to the channel, not just the breaking news on YouTube, by scanning the QR code or going on Tousi.tv. The link is also in the description, and download the Tousi TV app, the home of geopolitical news from your app stores. That's the best way to stay up to date with everything, and you get access to the chat forum where we have the members. Let's get some reaction from the members. Deb says there will be an uprising in the West. Well, my theory was always, because there's eventually going to be what people would call World War III. But it's not going to be called World War III. It's not going to be in a more conventional way like the first two. The game of conflicts have changed as well. but it's not going to be tanks crossing borders. The way I see a more global conflict within the next few a few years, a few decades, is going to be internal in multiple countries on the ground in a more civil conflict way. And it's going to be between those who are against the values of that individual country, which is also the Western values. So hypothetically, you would see the same situation on the streets of Canada, France, Germany, Sweden, UK, Australia. And that is a fear. Nobody wants to see that. But if they're not careful, this will be the inevitable outcome. And it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible thing to see. But if you're not careful, that will be your next version of global conflict. It will be internal, on the ground, because the enemy is within. We did a good report on this, even legally speaking. Is that the barrister? Yeah. He was not chipper. By the way, why was nothing mentioned about the Deliveroo cyclist in the reports? Did he not throw a kick in? Yeah, we don't know exactly what happened to him when it comes to the court and the judgment. So I don't think anything happened to that guy. There was the cyclists who were just also getting involved for no reason. Can this non-sentence be appealed? It's done. Our judiciary has been infiltrated. It's totally clear to see. It's the whole system. It's not just the judiciary, but yes. All this is going to do is excuse anyone who attacks someone in the name of Islam. Because it's the legal precedent. They're about to pass a very vague hate law here. Is that Canada? Yeah. I know it's not to protect us. Yeah, Canada became the beginning of the snowball. And when, I think it was about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, when they started the new round of hate speech laws in Canada, and it affected people like Jordan Peterson, we were looking at it from the UK, and we knew there was a big liberal wave coming, and basically a self-harming wave of laws. But we were looking at it saying, well, we have problems in the UK, but at least we're not Canada. We're saying, well, Canada has lost it. And then New Zealand came up with some weird stuff under Jacinda Ardern. And we were like, well, thank God we have a lot of problems in the UK, but we don't actually have a self-harming government. We had bad governments, but that's irrelevant. But we didn't have this. But suddenly, over the last few years, we have a big mutual wave of legal changes, constitutional basic changes, based on legislations. So that's parliament, that's government. We also have more individuals joining the system. So that's civil service, bureaucrats, the justice system, the army, the police, the National Health Service, all these institutions, local councils, and society in general, all happen at the same time. But so quickly in Britain, because we had problems slowly building up. You had the grooming gangs, you had the Sharia councils, you had governments being stupid over the last 10, 20 years. We knew that. But suddenly, things changed so quickly, then some of us who were basically, with all the respect, we were making fun of the Canadians until 8 years ago. Wow, well, Canada's gone too far. It's gone so woke. Now the Canadians could look at the UK, and again, Canada still have massive problems with Carney. But they could be like, what is going on in the UK? I thought we were bad. It's completely lost. But there's still massive denial because the legacy media is trying their best to control the narrative. If they're going to go out there, only promote what that idiot in London, Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, or as I call him, Sad IQ Khan, if they're going to promote what he's ranting about, because earlier today they put him on a bus, and he doesn't take a bus. He's the mayor of London. He's got like 2-3 armored vehicles driving him everywhere he wants to go, which is very anti-net zero, by the way. But he had to put him on a bus, sitting there, interviewed by the legacy media, slagging off President Trump, saying Trump is racist, London is perfect, London is so safe and beautiful, I'm on a bus. That's the first time you're on a bus because you cleared the whole bus with your security team to make sure that you don't get targeted or mugged. You don't walk around safely in London, even if you're Sadiq Khan. But they are creating this propaganda. The reason I have to do what I do every single day, the reason I have to, thanks to our team and channels, it's not just my channel, there are a few other news channels as well, who are pushing and pushing and pushing against the mainstream control, is because of this. Because for years and years, for the past 10 years or so, we had the rise of podcasters and political commentators and interview channels or whatever, and they've all done a great job. Big shout out to all of them. But there has to be a new push, and I'm doing it. Our team is doing it. It's about challenging news. And Tousi TV, as your geopolitical news channel, we are trying our best. And we are expanding, we are getting bigger, we're getting more support, we're increasing our sources, we're increasing the number of reporters we have. And there are more channels, hopefully, that are being created as news channels. Forget about podcasts, forget about political commentators. They still have their place, and still support them. New media, support all new media. We don't have many people doing news, actual news. If you want to fight back against the mainstream legacy media, if you want to fight against your CBC, your CNN, your Sky News, all of them, you don't fight back by having a podcast. Again, they have their own space. News, fight news with news. That's why we do what we do. And obviously your support have been great. The channel's been doing well. Other channels as well. Well, and then we are trying our best as Tousi TV to help other channels be created as news. We need more news on the ground, more citizen journalists, more independent reporters. And if you are one of them, and if you need more support, send us an email. Our team will help you. We're going to create a whole program as well to actually, as part of giving something back, to actually help people set up more news channels. That is the idea. And obviously, if you want to get complete access to us, scan the QR code, download the Tousi TV app, go on tousi.tv. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.